It's always a question of compromise, like the one you've mentioned with Germany, for example. You always got to compromise. You will never find a place that would be like 100% perfect for you. There's always going to be something that is not exactly like you want it to be, right?
Hi, I am Sophie Vo, and this is the Rise and Play podcast. In the show, I sit down with influential thought leaders in the gaming industry to deconstruct how they create the best teams and company cultures in order to create the best games. Speaking to hundreds of game executives in the show, I have identified recurring patterns and mistakes that we all make in our leadership journey. Do you have to go through the same hurdles and make the same mistakes to learn too? You are not alone in this journey, and hopefully you can learn from a diverse range of seasoned leaders who already walked the talk. Every episode brings actionable insights and case studies that will help you improve your management skills, self-awareness, and empathic communication. Becoming a better leader starts with becoming a better human. Are you ready to unlock your full potential in life and business? Let's begin. Hi everyone, welcome to a new episode of Rise and Play. And today I'm sitting with Anton Gorodetsky from MyGames. So before we start, a bit of background on Anton. He's the head of industry relations at MyGames. And as the head of industry relations, Anton is responsible for establishing and strengthening relationship with key industry partners. Anton also has a background in journalism, and prior to joining MyGames, managed several online gaming outlets. So outside of MyGames, he's also a co-founder at InvestGame, a market intelligence platform that aggregates data on recent VC, PE, corporate and M&A transaction within the gaming industry, which is quite relevant as a topic as well these days, and maybe we'll cover it today. But as we start the conversation today, our main focus and what brought us together in this conversation, because it's been also a big conversation about hybrid, fully distributed or on-site, back to on-site, like now COVID is behind us. We don't really know for now. And then like everybody's like, okay, let's go back to the office. And we came to the conversation of here, looking at the case of MyGames, quite a big, also large company with a fully distributed teams, but didn't start that way. And so let's talk in practice today about that shift. So welcome, Anton, to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sophie. It's such a pleasure. I've been, listening to the podcast and hearing so much about you in the podcast. So huge pleasure. Super excited, a little bit nervous, but I'm just sitting here in a Limassol office watching the sea view. Calms my nerves.
Well, no worries, and grateful when I have also a guest like you, like really valuing the conversation that I have had on the episodes, and that's what makes a good match, because we are both choosing to be here to really talk about, for a change, like not market and how are we getting over unity, but team and culture for the context, because this is being recorded a week after the news. And not for myself, because I started also to record more on site. I should have made it to Cyprus actually to interview you, but yeah, note for later. I can come and visit you later to record it with a sea view. Sounds really good.
Absolutely. First, you're going to have a better reason, actually, in the beginning of next year, because we are moving to a bigger venue. It's going to be hopefully more beautiful and more suitable for the recording of a second part of this. So you're always welcome in Limassol and Cyprus.
Yeah, I think that's a good note for coming and also following up as well with the team. And as we talk about some of the teams, like how it's been going for them.
Sure.
So let's start with the start. And also for the listeners who maybe don't know that much about MyGames, could you also tell us about the history of the company, when it was founded, how it was founded, and how the teams were formed? From our discussion, I assume that everyone was in a studio, didn't start from Cyprus, maybe. So could you give a history to where it is today?
Of course. We've been founded back in 2019. So we have celebrated 4 years of the brand this May. It also aligned with the opening of our office in Yerevan, by the way, one of the several offices we have right now. MyGames is mostly famous for such games as War Robots. Some of you might have heard about this game. And also Rush Royale, our latest hit. Also, we have games such as Left to Survive, Hustle Castle, Tactical, and of course, we have several games in the pipeline. We are currently in the process of launching Hocked, which is a PC and console title. We have also recently launched globally an extension of the War Robots franchise, which is called Little Big Robots. You may download it and try it on your mobile. It's a very cute game. So if you guys have been playing War Robots, you might want to check it out as well. Yeah, we used to work in the offices, but full disclosure, we have actually had international teams long before the pandemic. So the MyGames team has been distributed all over the world. So what I want to say is that we have actually been quite used to working remotely long before life made us do this.
All right, so that's good for the history as well. And I'm curious to get back to the time of pandemic, because like as you said, you were already more a core part of the team that being on site. That's this kind of idea. And as you were working with people in different locations, what was before the pandemic, the choice why you would work with people remotely elsewhere? Was that because you needed to find talents and then that was like the compromise? Or it was contractors, maybe like third layer partners. I don't know how to call it. Like when it's not the core team, but like not the super core team, it was okay to work with people from different locations. So what was the thinking at the time?
Absolutely. As I've said earlier, even before COVID struck, by the way, I appreciate the joke about whether you're not sure it's still with us or not. Because sometimes when I hear about people getting COVID these days, I'm like,
yeah.
Is this thing still? Yeah. Anyway, even before the pandemic struck, we had already had an international team, and hence we at MyGames, we have been quite flexible about the actual location of people. So whatever they wanted to travel, meet their colleagues, meet their peers in some other countries, we have had an office, actually headquarters in Amsterdam, in the Netherlands. Limassol, Cyprus is the second biggest office, and it has been from the beginning like this. So MyGames always appreciated people traveling around, just as long as you are staying connected and actually doing your job. That's totally okay to be anywhere you want to be. And this also helps different people exchange the maybe different views, the experiences, the different vision on the gaming industry. So we firmly believe, and I personally believe, that as the more you travel around, the more you are present in different parts of the world, the richer is your expertise. And moreover, when the pandemic struck, we have kind of been ready for that. I would not say like 100% ready. That would be not particularly true. But still, we've been ready to work from home and to communicate properly, to make sure that the teams and the senior staff understand each other. This has not been huge surprise for us, or something that would make you not be able to do the most basic things during the work.
To understand a bit more concretely the structure you had at the time, like you said, like core locations in Amsterdam and Cyprus, how many people were based there, and what was the leadership structure? Was it game teams that are using the office as an office space, or is there someone kind of running the space, like head of studio or team lead? How was it structured?
We don't really refer to internal teams as studios. They're just, teams, as you have said. And different teams have been located in different hubs and offices, or just locations, really. We didn't really used to have hubs and offices before the pandemic. I mean, apart from Amsterdam and Cyprus, now we have several more of them. So I've already mentioned the Yerevan one. We have also recently opened offices in Abu Dhabi, which is in the Emirates, and Belgrade, which is in Serbia. And we're in the process of opening an office in Georgia.
Oh.
Yeah, the country, not the state.
Yeah. Good mention.
Yeah, in the beautiful city of Tbilisi. Yeah, so the C-level people are, of course, located in the Netherlands and Cyprus, because these are international locations. You can travel whatever you need to from these places. And they, of course, travel a lot. They communicate a lot with partners. They participate in the events. So, all of that stuff. The team leads as well even though I've mentioned that my games is super okay, super comfortable about people working from, pretty much any place around the world, we still encourage, since we have already opened offices and hubs, several of them, we're still trying to encourage people to work somewhere around these places because it's still easier for us as a company to make sure they have everything they need for work, for proper communication, for the meetups, for gatherings, for sharing expertise and whatever. Because sure, you may work from Thailand or Bali or some other exotic, beautiful location, but since it's not very easy to make sure you have the laptop or the dev kit, right? Or whatever you need to make a game or to market a game or to communicate your brand vision and any other aspect of running a gaming company, it's not very easy to provide people with these particular things in the locations we don't have legal entities in, right?
Mm.
So, of course, the team leads, the C-level people, they're all located in the offices in the in the Netherlands, in Cyprus, whatever they feel like working from. Yeah, as long as you make sure as an employee of MyGames that you have everything you need and you can care for yourself in the countries we don't have offices/hubs in, super fine.
Yeah, we get back to that part, which is quite an important point of logistics.
Sure.
Okay, we can employ from all around the world and nobody talks about the legal implications. And when you actually are the one to do it, like myself, it's not fun, I can say, and gives a lot of trouble. So we get back to it. Something super interesting in the location that you chose, because first of all, how did you choose those locations as candidates to be an office or hub? Is it because of local talents in the region, or for the legal entity? How did you make those decisions?
Of course, the market plays a huge part in this, like how exactly the region is developed in terms of, the gaming industry, the gaming community. Like part of my job is communicating with gaming associations and alliances. Like we have recently become members of, for example, DGA, which is the Dutch Gaming Association, and also SGA, like the most recent one, Serbian Gaming Associations. And all of them are beautiful, nice people who can help you with pretty much anything you want in terms of communicating with the locals from the gaming industry. So we look at the market, we look at how developed is both the community and the B2C market to make sure we can do proper business development in these particular regions, in these particular hubs. And I'm not the one to tell you that the MENA region is making all the news pretty much every month, both in terms of investments, in terms of the audiences. And so Abu Dhabi was an obvious choice as well. So yeah, first and foremost, business development. These are the key regions. And of course, the second most important factor is that we look at how many of MyGames people are already settled in these particular regions, right? So this is why we have, again, Abu Dhabi, because several of MyGames people have already been there, right? As well as Yerevan, as well as Tbilisi, as well as Serbia. So we just multiply the market, the local gaming community with the concentration of a particular number of MyGames people in this city/country, region, and here we go. These are two of the most important factors.
I think that's interesting strategically, because I hear often, when I talk to studios and founders, the challenge in recruiting talents, right? It's I would say, super hot markets and regions. You have Finland, big concentration of talents and studios, right. Barcelona, London, to an extent a bit Germany, France, mostly Paris.
Of course.
So you're picking regions that I haven't heard, at least from my network, that people are fighting for talents there. But this is, I think, where it sounds like a good strategy to connect with the community, the business development part, and your own strategy, recruitment, network, because it's all about the connection and relationship in the end.
Of course. I mean, I absolutely get your point. You're super right. Yeah. Everybody knows about Turkey and Finland and Helsinki, of course, and Istanbul. These and Paris, sure. I've just recently met Victor from MY.GAMES, who lives in Paris. We've been talking about that as well. If Victor listens to that, hi, Victor. London, obviously, yes. But these are all fully settled, fully known, and not the cheapest places, right? So the other factor that I haven't mentioned yet, apart from the biz dev, from the market, and from the concentration of employees, another factor is, of course, the tax and legal nuances. Since we're a business, we got to take this into account as well. And yeah, we could set up an office in Helsinki or, in Istanbul, but you got to take into account all the legal things and, peculiarities and this and that. And well, some regions are just, kind of better in this particular sense. I'm not comparing right now, just as an example, right? For example, in the Emirates, they have this zero income tax for employees, for example. So when you, for example, relocate an employee into, say, here in Cyprus, right? Or into the Netherlands or whatever, they are, of course, subject to pay income tax, right? They don't have, in the special economic free zone, you do not have to pay income tax as an employee of a member of this zone. They have also kind of a tax cashback once 3 months. This looks like an advertisement for the gaming companies to go to the Emirates, but this is true, really. And I'm pretty sure people know about this without me telling. But the idea is that you can get a 30% cashback once per quarter, and then from the government, and then the company decides itself what it wants to do with that. And for example, MyGames, it just gives it back to the employee. So you kind of get like pretty much the fourth salary every quarter, which is, you wouldn't argue with that that is a good stimulus, right?
Yeah, totally. And I think it's a good point here because I respect a lot different approach of companies and for the context of where they're at and what their vision and also even the network they have. So it's super interesting to hear different perspective here when you are chasing kind of a red ocean of offices.
Right.
It's painful. Like the argument about taxes, and I look at it from a business point of view, it's really painful.
Absolutely.
I just give example here because living in Germany and having set up now a bunch of businesses and legal entity, just for a here comparison, and without saying if it's better or worse, because it has other benefits. In Germany, it can go up to 45% of your income.
Yeah.
If you are like over a ceiling, I think it's 75, 80,000 annual revenues, you are already in that bracket of taxes. But what it covers is health insurance, pension, which also arguably in Germany, there won't be any pool of money left, even if you. So we pay a lot of taxes for good infrastructure here in Germany and health, equality, social support. As a legal entity, there's a lot of things you need to have together to be able to offer equal rights for a German employee. And so that's an implication to have. And we will get like now to this topic where, usually it's like, let's open a location here in Germany or Finland. Like, okay, sounds great. And then the person who is in charge of it is like, oh my God. And it's like, or you have already employed someone there. It's like, okay, where is my salary? How will I be paid?
Yes.
What about my health, right and money? Why don't I have the same holiday as my colleague in, Finland? So how are you handling this?
Do not get me started on public holidays, Sophie. Do not do this.
How do you implement that? Do you have a team dedicated to this?
Absolutely. So yeah, basically, once we have decided on the particular region, on the particular city, and compared all the first and foremost factors which I've mentioned earlier, there's like a second step, I would say. We find and we start working with local consultants, maybe partners, maybe some partner agencies who help us with analyzing all the legal, the financial implications, tax aspects of opening an actual office, of opening a legal entity. Another important thing is we look into how we can help people who choose to go here, to travel here, to work here. What would be the implications for them? Like, how can they actually legalize in this country, right? What is the particular process to make sure you're not deported or have some law problems or whatever? And also what benefits are available for you as an employee, like the ones I've mentioned earlier in the Emirates and Abu Dhabi, for example. What services that you can receive, how you would get compensated for the medical treatment that you get, and all of these nuances and things. We're getting consulted on this one. And then after that, once we see all the pros and cons, and there's everywhere pros and cons, it's always a question of compromise. Like the one you've mentioned with Germany, for example, you always got to compromise. You will never find a place that would be like 100% perfect for you. There's always going to be something that is not exactly like you want it to be, right? And then we hire local staff. We hire an office manager, we hire an HR person who helps you out with all the documents, who helps out employees to settle. And we have special like FAQs or questionnaires where MyGames employees can provide feedback. They can share feedback. And also, some people have already been living here, right? They already know some stuff that even HR people might not know about. So it's always a process of communication, a process of sharing knowledge and expertise, not only on how to make a game, but also on how to live in another country. And then we have all these FAQs like what you got to expect when you decide to move in this particular city, in this particular country, with your family, with your cats, with all that stuff. The whole process on paper, it may be a pain in the, whatever, but it's actually kind of simple. There may be some technicalities and difficulties. And one of the most difficult things of opening a legal entity in another country is not actually opening a legal entity. It's opening a bank account because, with all the KYC things and whatnot. So then we find an office after, setting up a legal entity, registering a company, renting an office, doing maybe some minor renovations like the ones we're doing right now with the bigger Limassol office, for example. And yeah, supporting people in the relocation process. I'm pretty sure this is a standard procedure for any company, not only MyGames. So the costs are rather standard. And we, of course, provide the so-called relocation bonuses for people. Like they are not actually spending their time communicating with the local authorities in terms of, setting up documents and whatever, because they got work to do, right?
Yeah, you say it sounds simple, but I can tell you in practice, I've heard more like hiring contractors from a region and then they are kind of a bit like floating people in different regions. So here it's also streamlining really your process on how to be in a new region, right? So to summarize, like getting like help consultants to like what are the implications if we have a presence there, getting partners, local partner to establish a legal entity, having already an established network, like employees who know. So you don't come like with questions if you want to relocate, and having all the support on the HR level, really to integrate. And I think this makes like a very structured and stable process to actually be in a location and not in a messy way, where I've seen also the downside of having not that structure, and it creates quite a lot of problem and frustration as well for people when they are not accompanied. If you want to take seriously, so what I like about what you shared, you go serious about being distributed, right? Not just the upside of it. Like let's work from anywhere without taking responsibility of the work you actually need to do to be present in different places.
Yes, it's so many nuances, really. Like obviously, every place, every country has its own rules and taxes and whatever. You got to take all of this into account to make sure people are comfortable, because whatever they're comfortable, they can concentrate and focus on their work.
Yes,
which is the most important thing.
Yeah, it's very thoughtful. So now we covered the HR people ops part, which is not so mentioned often in like even conversation, but I appreciate that you gave quite a lot of visibility here, because that's part of the work as well, as we love to focus on games and teams. Let's look at here at the case of more distribution or full remote setup on a case of a game and a team. So Rush Royale, your latest hit.
Yeah.
I'm curious about what's the setup of the team, how they started, how big are they, how are they even distributed today, and how did they work to even launch the game? Could you give more context about it?
Yeah, of course. Thank you for bringing that up. And yeah, one of the biggest hits of MyGames is Rush Royale, which is the #1 tower defense game right now on the market.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you so much. The guys have done more than $230 million in lifetime revenue last time I
Wow.
checked. I'm pretty sure the number is bigger already. And more than 60 million downloads, if I'm not mistaken, hopefully. But one of the things that is super cool about this game, apart from being actually a good game, is that the team has done all of this fully remote, like from the very concept of the game to the live ops and to operating this game to this very day. Of course, this has all been apart from the talent and the expertise of the people on the team making Rush Royale. This has partially been possible thanks to the fact that I've already mentioned earlier that MyGames has been doing stuff and making games remotely or hybrid format even before, right? So the whole ecosystem, the infrastructure have already been here to provide the support the guys needed to continue making this game and play testing the game and whatnot. There's a very cool project lead, Alexei. He has been telling me that actually working from home has had very little impact on the guys. They have already been ready for that. They didn't really care that much from where they do this. And they have assembled a very small team, like 3 people, who have known each other for a very long time. And this allowed them to collaborate with the very first steps, with creating a concept, with making the first build. They just know how to make games. And one of the biggest things that was important for them is to make sure they release the game ahead of the competition. So they just focused on working solely on this product. They had regular morning calls. Like every morning they had calls. They shared the plans for the day. They stayed in constant contact. One of the things that we appreciate very much at MyGames is that you got to be very transparent about communication. I know it sounds like, a generic thing, but we actually do this. You can write to whomever you want, even to the C-level, and share your ideas, ask a question. You got to talk and you got to listen. Whoever that is, the team lead, the developer, artist, communications person, whatever. They play tested, they iterated on gameplay, and then back in May of 2020, they began development. And in 2 weeks, they've managed to prepare an already working prototype of Rush Royale. And so,
Wow.
you could already see a gameplay. The biggest idea is that you got to make sure that the right people are in key positions. So you know that what everyone is responsible for, and you can trust these people, and you know that they're going to deliver to the due date, right? So they just were lucky enough to build such a team. In just 6 months, the game went through all stages of development from the initial prototype to the release. So imagine doing this on a fully remote format of work. So kudos to the guys. Apart from the actual development team, so from the first 3 people, they have been fully supported by marketing and game analytics and social media guys and the UX, testing and play testing and operations and whatever. And this is one of the strengths of MyGames, is that we have like actual development teams, and then you have all the full 360 supporting ecosystem of marketing and the communications people and biz dev people, and we have our own UX lab, allowing people to test hypotheses and ideas and whatnot. So you can talk to anyone really, and as long as you fit into the actual pipeline and to the sprint, you're good to go.
Sounds like a very also streamlined structure. I'm also like learning through the conversation today, having a sense of a culture, like you sound organized as a company in the chaos of what games
Hopefully.
are. I've read some debates about the good and bad of working remote, like, or we don't believe in it anymore. You can't create new games and companies remotely. I think what's behind the debate is, what is the setup when you start a new game? And here's something really important you shared. It's a small team, but who knew each other, how to work together and trusted each other. So this is what you try to achieve usually when you start a new game or even a company, to remove the maximum of friction of that. And yes, being remote, not knowing really the people makes it slower. That is true.
Sure.
But in that case here, I think it's important to have nuances in the conversation. If you do have a core of a team that really trust each other, they don't have to see each other every day, and they know how to work and also debate. And they're also committed to launching and having that game out quickly. It's very impressive. Like 2 weeks prototype, you said 6 months to launch,
Yeah.
soft launch, especially like I would say more elaborated game these days. We are not talking about hyper casual, but we are not talking about like a super strategy realistic
Yeah,
game
yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
take
4X.
2 years. And another important element as I'm reflecting is how you grow the team, like having key people with like united vision, racing toward the same direction, being at key position to take decision quickly and so on. So also credit to the core team, how they grew and how they build and expanded the team to onboard people that were right for what they needed to achieve that goal of launching in an impressive, fast way to the growth engine and then to the result where it is today. And out of curiosity, how big is the
Hmm.
team today and where are they located? What are the multiple locations where they're from?
We would need to check on that. I know that, for example, the tactical team is 70 plus, one of the games that I've mentioned in the beginning. So it should be around 100 plus something, 150, maybe even bigger. I'm not really sure about that. And when you talk about a team which is 100 plus something people, we gotta check with the HR people where exactly are all of them based. Some of them are here in Cyprus, that's for sure. That's for sure. Some of them are in the Netherlands. I'm pretty sure some of them are in Armenia, in Yerevan. Yeah, we gotta check with the HR people on that. But 100% on the fact that they are distributed as well. It's not like all of the 100 plus something people are sitting in the same office making Rush Royale bigger and better than it is already.
Back to how you set up your location, streamline, like kind of ready to grow and hire quickly because you are set up.
Mm-hmm.
This is what it allows when you are can hire for multiple location, or like we initially started, when you can hire people who can take care of themselves in other places that they want to pick. Because the main challenge when you have like a good signal traction, and you mentioned like to be ahead of the competition. So if you're slow by the time you like testing, you're being copied, scaling like from 3 people to what 100 plus. It's not important the final number, but how much time was that in between?
So that was back in May of 2020. Now we're in September of 2023. So it took like 3 years for them to scale from 3 people and the first prototype to what Rush Royale is now. 3 years.
Yeah, so to scale to that size over like 2 3 years, yeah, it takes some efforts, and this is where also it becomes a talent competition game, because when
Yeah,
you try to scale, of course you have outsourcing and so on, but it's
sure.
also the other challenge. And can you keep up with growing your game, the content, and delivering the cadence of content?
Especially into this day and age, right? On the market. Every month is just getting
Yeah,
funnier and funnier.
yeah. Like looking back, reflecting more as well on being fully distributed, because here we have covered quite how to do it, like technically, also the upside of it. But I would like to hear as well from your experience, what have been the difficulties? Maybe they are the ones we know already, but the other ones that you haven't had the chance to share.
It's all, good and well traveling around the world. And I'm just talking from my experience as well. Like, apart from living in a different country and doing all these events, and you know this better than I do. Like, you've just got back from Helsinki, right?
Yes.
Well,
Drained.
I can relate to that. I've just been to Moby Dictum, before that in Dubai, and this Gamescom thing. Yeah, so look, you got to adapt to the local mentality. This is one of the biggest challenges, I'm pretty sure, not only for me, but also for other people from MyGames and, the other game dev people as well. You got to adapt to the local rules, to the local way of life and the local way of things, right? So you may be all like in order constantly and used to make everything fast and quick and organized. And then you got to adapt to the chill and to the easier take on life. For example, in Southern Europe, right? Like Spain, Italy, Cyprus, of course, and, Malta. Being in places like this, it can be a little bit difficult, at least people like me with, a little bit of OCR. Everything has to be in order, everything has to be organized constantly. And then these local guys are not a little bit more, again, chill and easy on life. And this can be difficult. And this is true for every other location, really. Like, you have different rules and different traditions in the Netherlands, Germany, in France, in the US, in China, of course, a whole nother thing. Like, we have just recently had a trip in China for the China Joy, doing several cities in just under a week or something. Like, every other day is a new city, Shenzhen, Beijing, whatever. This is crazy, right? And you got to take into account all those little things and peculiarities of a whole nother nation. This is difficult. This takes a toll on your character. This can be hard for your focus and for your mentality a little bit. Yes, the weather is nice and the air is beautiful and the trees and the sea, but at the same time, you're spending way more energy on adapting, and you still got a job to do, and you still got to communicate with people, and then you got to make sure you know how to take care of the money and take care of the taxes and take care of communicating. And I haven't even got my cat here, right? So you got to think about transferring a cat, which is also a problem.
Yeah.
I do not even have kids. I can only imagine the problems my colleagues and MyGames employees have endured relocating with kids and traveling with kids and adapting to schools. A friend of mine and our colleague, who is the head of platform relations, they've recently moved to Abu Dhabi. I just know the grueling process of getting your kid into local school. This is crazy. This is really crazy. Yeah, I can go on for another like 10 minutes on this, approving all the docs, translating them into the Arabic, and then approving locally. This is one of the biggest challenges, really.
Yeah.
And you need to understand how, the employment market functions, like what are the differences with the one you used to be in. This is another thing. You can now understand the meaning of community, because when you're not living in a place where you have an office or a hub, you're just on your own. You have friends. You can do whatever you feel like. Yeah, you've done some work, and then you go play some video games or, just go outside. But when you're the different people who are now living in a particular hub, in a particular region, you become a community. You got to share the free time. You got to share advice. You got to share some feedback and what you want to do and where you want to go and where you don't want to go, things like that.
That's, I think, the first time I hear that point brought when it comes to really, being in different location. And that's quite an important one. I think something that stayed with me is like the change or influence on character, because there's a reality that you are influenced by your environment. And so you have your own culture as a company, like the online life, when you connect with your colleague, a way of working, a way of thinking. But then you have regions where the culture might be very different. I'm sure it's very different as well in Abu Dhabi, as an example. And then there's that, I would say, almost like discrepancy of another way of living, which is not even your natural way. And like the mental load and the mental adaptation to it, I think it's an important point in how it can factor into the work, which is like the initial idea, like you can focus by being remote, but also the cost of it when removing kind of over adaptation hurdles, that it can also cost you to be even more exhausted. It
takes a double focus from you. Like, you not only got to focus on what you say and who you talk to and what is the business goal of this meeting or communication or a call, and then you're also got to take into account the local peculiarities. And you know this better than I do. Like, whenever you get the gist of what I'm saying at any conference, like mid-size or any big conference like Gamescom or GDC, like so many different people from many countries. And this is like a melting pot, communicating and making sure you don't say anything offensive.
Yes.
Which is not offensive in your background, right?
Yes,
But
yes,
then,
yes.
that's part of the job. That's part of the job.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And I think it's, again, being aware of it and doing everything you can as a company to support, but also giving ownership and agency for people to choose to go in location with the implications. So I really like as well that you trying to inform as much as possible and educate this is what you're getting into, and those are the pros and cons, and make the decision. And without getting in detail, there's a whole also extended family and partners and so on that have to follow you. So very good point to share. Like I said, I haven't heard that point. Usually I hear the usual challenges about remote, but I think that on a human level and cultural level, that's not a small one for sure. Well, thanks a lot, Anton, for sharing. And really, I appreciated having kind of more of a thorough and in-depth conversation about what actually it means to also work remotely, but also the great success story and case study about Rush Royale and the growth of that team. And I wish great success, for the growth of the game and the future games to come, with also your new teams located in different regions.
Thank you so much, Sophie. This has been such a pleasure. Come over to Limassol. We're going to show you around and we're going to do a second part.
Yes. I have contact now who invited me. So it's enough for me to come and I'll try to visit. That would be great. Well, thanks a lot, Anton, and take care of yourself.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to this latest episode of the Rise and Play podcast. I am growing a community of conscious leaders across the industry and beyond. If you want to join this movement, please share the podcast with other conscious leaders, because we have so much more we can learn from each other. If you've enjoyed this episode, please follow and rate the show on Spotify or your other favorite podcast platform. It will help other growing leaders to discover the show and benefit from the valuable insights. If you would like to grow rapidly your leadership skills, you can find more insights on riseandplay.io, where you will also find my free masterclass on conscious leadership and other resources that I offer. Have a great week, and remember to take care of yourself. Until the next time.